It's such a pleasure for me to be here at the end of one of the most remarkable conventions that I can remember and many of us Brits here can remember. Actually, make that relief. It's hard to express the relief that the British delegates here have felt on escaping to the new world from the electoral tsunami ripping across the landscape of the old world. The energy here, the momentum, or as the kids like to say, the vibes of this conference have been nectar in the veins for us bruised and battered Brits. I was just thinking to myself as I walked past all those stands staffed by those amazing young people, I can smell the future here. I can smell momentum, excitement, hope. And I think we Brits, particularly in the conservative ecosystem, need to start thinking about how we can be, as my friend and the freshest face lord at NatCon, Nathan Lyons, puts it, right-wing progressives. We need to be excited about the future, and I feel excited about the future when I am here. It's been a wonderful few days. I couldn't have imagined a more opportune week to make my very first pilgrimage from the far-flung colonial outpost of the global American empire that is my home to this glorious imperial capital. By the way, I like to say to my friends that we may have recovered our political sovereignty from Brussels just about, but let me assure you that Brits are just not ready for the conversation of when we're going to regain our cultural sovereignty from Washington, from Harvard, and from Silicon Valley. What's struck me most in the few days I've had here is that as Senator Vance put it, America is so much more than its Constitution and its Declaration of Independence. We in Britain tend to think that America pops into being out of nothing, like reality itself. It's a kind of creatio ex nihilo. We tend to be creationists when we come to think about the emergence of the United States. And that's simply wrong, as the 19th century French political theorist, who I'm not allowed to name or get away with naming in the University of Cambridge, but let's just go for it, Joseph de Maistre. There, I said it. As de Maistre observed accurately, documents like those that are merely inscribe in ink what is etched beforehand onto the hearts and minds of the men who draft and compose them and ratify them. America, as a friend reminded me earlier today, is before all else a nation, a people, not an idea. It's a nation and a people held together by a great chain of sentiment. It's not rational, but nor is it irrational, it's pre-rational. If exiled, condemned to burn cakes in the marshlands like King Alfred of yore, their hearts are not going to long for liberty or equality or even diversity or sustainability. They're going to yearn for one thing and one thing alone, and that thing is home. That unbreakable connection to what is your own. I never tire of reminding myself of Yoram's observation that national conservatism is a tautology just as much as liberal conservatism is an oxymoron. The fact that we need to attach that adjective, the N word to the C word, just shows what a state we're in. To be a conservative is to be a national conservative, or it is not to be a conservative at all. And a nation, as Yoram has written and others have written, is comprised of the families, the communities, the congregations of the host nation of our nations, an unbreakable golden chain of interlocking identities that turns me into we, that marks us off from them. It's the only chain powerful enough to resist the specter of anarcho-tyranny that is threatening every corner of the West right now. Put a Tibetan in Tennessee, and whatever the great gifts and prosperity that low-tax haven might offer, that Tibetan, our Tibetan friend, is going to miss that moment when his heart skips a beat at the sight of the snow-capped Himalayas on the horizon. This is conquest's first law. It's an ironclad law. Everyone is conservative about what they know best. I'd modify that, humbly. Call it less humbly, Orr's first law. Everyone is conservative about what they love most. And as Senator Hawley reminded us so powerfully on Monday night, in the end, Augustine was right. It's our common objects of love that stitch us together as a moral community. It's that shared horizon of affection that will keep you writing those checks to the government without too much resentment for the neighbors benefiting from entitlements, welfare, and largesse. That's what's made America great. It's what's made Britain great, it's what's made Israel great and India great, and it's what can make them all great again. Chesterton once said that men did not love Rome because she was great. Rome was great because people had loved her. Well, friends, that's true of your country and mine. Our countries, the countries that we love, we don't love them because they are great. They are great because our forefathers loved them. And make no mistake, it is a struggle to love them today. We are up against a tidal wave of hate, a culture of self-repudiation, as Sir Roger Scruton put it, towards everything that we want to call home. Oikophobia, as he termed it. Make no mistake, so many of our enemies want to wipe out our history and our heritage and start again, as Pol Pot did at year zero. Mass immigration has brought my country to breaking point. Last year, we let in 1.2 million people to a landmass the size of New York State. Your southern border is no longer just porous. 1.5 million, I read, crossed it in 2023. And these people tell themselves cultural stories, too, founding myths. And those stories, those myths, those songs, those histories, those recipes may resemble those of the nation they reach. But they will tend to quicken the pulse long after those people have settled. And why not? Why would one want to erase that impulse? I can think of almost no time in history that a nation has successfully introduced people with different loyalties at scale, especially when every new arrival is taught to loathe their new home and rearrange the furniture as if it were their old home. A home simply ceases to be a home when owners no longer outnumber the guests. And if the state lacks the political will to evict guests, impolite guests, then it loses the right to command the political loyalty of the citizens it is supposed to serve and protect. The people responsible for this, The rhinos, I think you call them in Congress, they're the chinos in the House of Commons, Conservatives in name only. Those who are too afraid to do anything about it don't love their countries. They don't have those reserves of Augustinian affection, no matter what the differences are between them. They hate the civilization that gave birth to them. They repudiate it. I've said time and time again to conservatives who laugh at movements like Queers for Palestine, tempting as it is, the joke's actually on you. Because the joke's on you because you don't understand that a movement like that is completely coherent. It's completely coherent for the simple reason that the hatred of Islamo-leftists for Western civilization has always been greater than the hatred they have for one another. And until we understand that, we're not going to win. And until we understand that the way to counter that is not hating them back, but loving what is ours more fiercely than ever, we're not going to win. On that note, can I just say what a delight it is to have met so many Jewish friends at this conference and to have made so many new ones too. And it's an especial relief having been confronted for many months in Cambridge, I'm sorry to say, and on the streets of London with the moral delinquency of the response of so many on the streets of our metropolis and our universities since October the 7th. Maybe you thought it was an accident that the blueprint for national conservatism came from the pens of Israeli thinkers. Maybe you were surprised. Well, if you were, there's no excuse to be surprised any longer, as we gaze every day on acts of heroism and courage and self-sacrifice that the people of Israel are displaying, all undertaken because of their love of life and because of their love of home. You want to see how Augustine works in action on the ground. You want to see how a shared love for home makes a nation. Then take a look at the beaming faces of those IDF soldiers. They're always beaming. Those young soldiers who every day not only equal but exceed the examples of their founding forefathers. And look at the faces of so many of our young people. By contrast, young people, not all of whom, but many of whom, are so quick to destroy every single reminder of our founding forefathers. Friends, we are at a civilizational moment. It's true, Rome wasn't burnt in a day. Washington won't be either, or London. But the arsonists strolled into our cities a long time ago, almost unnoticed. And they've been, here and there, quietly, setting and stoking fires to almost everything we love for many years now. And time is running out. And there's no reverse gear. As we know, it's part of the genius of liberalism to have recognized that license, like liberty, once granted to individuals, can never be wrested back from them, no matter how damaging the consequences of that license to society. That's the ratchet of liberalism. That's why we have to win every single time, and they only have to win once. So, let us live by loving what is ours, and let us reject the lie that to love what makes us who we are means that we hate what makes others who they are. Everyone in this room, no doubt, will be familiar with the platitude that it's a structural weakness of conservatism that Every nation is conserving what's particular to it, and so on. Once upon a time, we were up against workers of the world uniting. Now we are up against the woke of the world uniting. And that, by the way, as many speakers have noticed, is what makes these brief gatherings so precious, so vitalizing. The Soviets had a Comintern, I joked to somebody on the first night. What we need, what we are building here, is a con-intern. I was reminded of this tension talking to a conservative university colleague in Cambridge last week. That's the other one. I mentioned in passing that I would be here, at a conference on conservatism in Washington. He asked what on earth could we have in common with people who were conserving a revolution against the crown. By the way, he added, the average shelf life for an empire is 250 years, which means the final curtain of Pax Americana would be about 2026, be November, and maybe the way things are going, some might feel that's just about right. But no, we shall resist it. You shall resist it. I half expected him actually to put on a tweed cap which said something like, "Make America Great Britain Again," on the front. It's quite an eccentric. But do you know what? And as I told him, I said, "You're wrong. You're wrong." And as I reflected on why he was wrong, I realized what it is that unites actually all of us in this room. It's what grounds the Comintern. And the moment I realized it actually was earlier today when I visited the Senate and for the first time and gazed at all those glorious paintings in the dome of the Capitol depicting heroic English subjects who were doing nothing more than fighting for their freedom, securing their ancient rights as freeborn Englishmen against those interloping monarchs from Hanover. Pooling and hogging power in their fancy courts and palaces in London and Windsor. Monarchs who'd rode roughshod over that great and glorious inheritance that is the English constitutional settlement in the common law, the law of the land, the Bill of Rights, our Bill of Rights, and of course, the Magna Carta, the Torah of the English-speaking peoples. And what struck me in the Senate today was that actually your revolution was not a revolution. There's nothing for us English conservatives who always get very nervous and talk about revolution. That's not how we do things. But it's not a revolution. It's a restoration of the spirit of a people, its customs, its byways, its songs, its heritage, its history, its faith, its institutions. Restoration, not revolution. That is what every one of our nations needs in the West today, and that is the challenge that should unite national conservatives to one another at this juncture. It's restoration, my friends, that is our most urgent task. It's the vocation to which every single one of you is summoned. So as we leave this glorious gathering, let us promise each other that we're going to set out from here to restore what's been destroyed, to regain what's been captured, to bind up the broken, and to heal what our enemies have wounded. Thank you, and may God prosper us all.